It's Tuesday afternoon, and what is Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer doing? Well, no less than a week ago, Chuck Schumer said he was so encouraged that Mitch McConnell was negotiating with him. Mitch McConnell said he never negotiated with Chuck Schumer. Today, Chuck Schumer appeared before members of press and said, Mitch McConnell is a horrible person again. He's a horrible person. He's that same horrible person he was last month. To which Mitch McConnell says, Chuck Schumer is his way or the highway, and I don't drive that way. I don't, there's no lobsters on that road. So I had a little confusion about this whole situation about Mitch, these 3 stimulus bills, Mitt Romney, who's out talking again, and I had to get some clarity on the situation. And so I had to go to talk to someone who would know more about this. And I went to the Calcina. There was Sirloin, I said, Sirloin, can you move on over? Why am I moving on over? You gotta move over. And I said, Sirloin, you're the expert for putting stimulus in a continuing resolution. Yeah. You were the person who got farmers into the last continuing resolution bill. They got stimulus. Cows got stimulus. You don't have to tell me. I wrote the bill. I know. I'm just telling my viewers. And so, what viewers? Why you're talking to me? I'm talking to other people also. And you needed stimulus, and you got congressional leaders to put stimulus on the last CR. So do you think that Mitch would put stimulus check, extension of unemployment benefits, and mortgage forbearance, rent eviction moratorium, and student loan repayment into a CR? Well, yeah. I mean, he's a cow. I'm like, Mitch is not a cow. Well, yeah, he is a cow. But let's assume he's not a cow. Would he still put it in there? I think he has to. I mean, what's the alternative? I mean, the alternative is shutting down the federal government, which, ultimately, if they shut down the federal government, Nancy Pelosi won't get her check if we don't get our check. That sounds delicious. It sounds more delicious than $12 ice cream. It is delicious, but ultimately, we rather have a stimulus check than something that's delicious. It just sounds, it sounds really, really good, and they have a deadline. They do have a deadline, December 11th. Well, I just think Mitch will do it. I just think it's very inventive. But he is a cow. The fact that he is a cow, do you think that really makes it happening? Oh yeah, he's gonna say, my way or the highway, or move on over. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's time for you to get some stimulus and move on over, unless it's your way or the highway. And this time it is our way, because there's a real push underway to get stimulus in the CR, stimulus in the continuing resolution, the budget bill that has a deadline of December 11th. If it's not in there, if it's not done and voted upon and approved and signed by the president, who ultimately can veto it if he doesn't like what's in there, then ultimately they don't get their checks if we don't get our checks. Sound delicious? It is delicious. And I'm going to be going over those details and more. But first, subscribe, because no one is fighting to get you money around the clock. And I'm really excited of all the new viewers in the last hour and a half. I think it was about 5, 6 viewers that DM'd me in just the last few hours that said, thank you. You got me thousands of dollars. And they gave me the number $5, $6, $7, $8,000 in the last 24 hours, whether it was CARES Act 1 money, or as escalated benefits, or as EIDL. It's just all the 3 different instruments we're doing, the Money Right Now instruments on this channel. And they're getting it, and I want you to get it. If you've not gotten, I want you to get it. And I really do thank the volunteers. Viewers just keep on saying such incredible praises of the volunteers, saying they're just such charming people, and they're working around the clock to really help ensure that you get this money. But on top of that, there's cities and counties across the country that are announcing new grants today. So that's really exciting, whether it's Houston or Los Angeles. So I want you, or California, I want to ensure that I'm up to date as much as you are on these grants. But in this recording, I'm going to be getting to more about Mitch and the congressional action. So make sure you subscribe. Also, like this video. It really helps in the algorithm ranking when you like the video. In this video, I will be going over what's really going on with Mitch. what you need to do as the purple power to make sure that Mitch stays on point, and why Mitch is now sort of getting a lot of distractions from a lot of different forces. It's very messy, not from Mitch's standpoint, but everything around Mitch. It's just a hot mess. And ultimately, why is it becoming this way? Because these people want book deals. These congressional leaders want to get a book deal. And they're talking on press releases and press statements and TV, not to give you stimulus, but to get them a nice book deal with a $500 advance. I'll have more about that in a second, but let's get to the breaking news. The breaking news, as you sit here today, is that Mitch McConnell is literally waking up and seeing all this hot mess going left and right. 1, 2, 3 new stimulus bills introduced today, none of which are going to see the light of day. None of which I'm even going to cover after the end of the day. I promise I'm not going to cover them because they're dead bills on arrival. Then we have the president-elect, Joe Biden, talking about stimulus, and we have the President Trump, talking about stimulus. We have Janet Yellen. And finally, we have Chuck Schumer. Let me go over each of these people individually because they're all really important on whether you would get stimulus during the holidays. First, I think the most important one, believe it or not, is the president. President Donald Trump, reportedly, according to Pete Navarro, who a lot of people sort of like because he's a straight shooter, he's sort of like a rebellious sort of, carefree type of guy. And that's the way he gives interviews. He was the guy who during the summer said, you know what, you're at 1 trillion, they're 3 trillion, just cut it in half and make a deal. Just call it a day. That's how he talks. He said that the president wants to get a stimulus deal done now before the holidays and wants that to be a very clear message to his followers. I think this is really exciting because if you understand the mentality of it, there are reports that the president wants to run again in 2024. So why not exit on a very positive note in which you say, hey, I got millions of Americans incredible financial relief at the end of 2020. And that's how I exited out in a way in which I really helped people. God bless him if he follows through with it as opposed to just saying something, which we've had a lot from this president on stimulus checks, which never came to fruition. But this is really exciting. Next, we have Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary appointee for Biden. Today, she talked about unemployment. She talked about unemployment and unemployment assistance, which is really good because PUA and UI are expiring in December. But what was actually more encouraging was Joe Biden, who said today, and get this is really quite interesting, that we need emergency relief right now. I'm urging Congress to get emergency relief right out now. It does not need to be everything. It just needs to be emergency relief. And we'll do a bigger bill later on. My goodness, there's so much about that that's exciting. I'll tell you why. First, it's exactly what he has said in his transition papers. I'll do multiple bills until we get this pandemic done. I'm not just going to do one bill and then move on to the environment and clean air and all that. I'm going to do multiple stimulus bills until we get this done, right? Second, it's contradictory to Nancy Pelosi. Mitch McConnell overnight said Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, all they want to do is everything or nothing. They want to have a bill that has the kitchen sink in it, or otherwise they don't want to give you anything. They want to have 100% or zero. Well, that's singularly the biggest problem with Nancy Pelosi, that Democrats and Republicans, and now, using Joe Biden's own words, has a problem with as well. Everyone has a problem with this. So the question is whether Joe Biden's going to have a real serious chat with Nancy Pelosi and tell her to stop doing this. Now, I've got a lot of questions where people say, I thought she's not involved, I thought she's not in here. Ultimately, someone's not telling her to, I almost cursed. Ultimately, someone's telling her not to zip it. It's like, zip it already. You're not going to get a $5 trillion bill between now and December. Give people what they need now, and we'll deal with this in January. We'll deal with all these other things now. We need stimulus checks, we need unemployment benefits, we need eviction moratorium, mortgage forbearance, and maybe some PPP. And that's all we need is an emergency CR stimulus right now. We don't need all this other stuff for the next 4 weeks. Next, Joe Biden said that it's important that the stimulus goes out right now before the holidays. Wow. So he wants a smaller stimulus. He doesn't want everything done right now. He doesn't want it as the final solution, the big kahuna right now. He just wants some things to get you through the holidays. Amen. So now let's turn to Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell basically said what Joe Biden said overnight. Mitch McConnell said this afternoon what Joe Biden said this morning. Mitch McConnell said, you know what, the problem I'm having with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi is that they want 100% or nothing. Well, this goes back to what I talked about the night after election night, that the chief negotiator for the Democrats will be Joe Biden, and that the chief negotiator for the Republicans is Mitch McConnell. The problem Americans are having is that Joe Biden is not closing the door on Nancy Pelosi and say, let me take the reins and take care of this, or let me have Janet Yellen take care of this and stop meddling. And ultimately, the meddling continued today with Chuck Schumer. There's one thing you don't do in negotiations, and that is insult the other side. Again, who said this as well besides me? Joe Biden said this on his transition papers. We need to talk with respect to the people on the other side of the aisle, and we need to stop being bickering and trying to disagree. We need to start trying to agree. Well, what did Chuck Schumer do today? Call Mitch McConnell some more names. All Chuck Schumer does is call people names. I mean, Chuck Schumer, you should stay home if all you have to volunteer to the American people is to call other people names. Now, yeah, he's not taking personal attacks on Mitch McConnell, at least today he's not, but his words are just generally a professional attack on Mitch McConnell, and never an attack on the numbers or the analysis or anything. It's just, you're horrible, you don't care, you're a bad person, you don't care, you're horrible. Do you think Chuck Schumer is going to get a phone call from Mitch McConnell after Mitch McConnell is called all those names by Chuck Schumer? No. It is beyond my line of rational thought in wondering why Chuck Schumer thinks it's productive to continually call the number one negotiator for the Republicans names on a daily basis. And ultimately, the reason I bring this up is because it will impact the ability for any resolution to ever be reached if the number one Democrat in the Senate is continually calling the number one Republican in the Senate names during the negotiations. Children acting like children. So then we turn to what could come next and what may come next. Viewers always ask me, what is your opinion? What do you think is going to happen? This is my opinion. That as the Purple Power, you need to be very loud and clear to Mitch McConnell and his communications director that stimulus needs to stay in the CR. We have to understand that where we got from Sunday. Sunday, the news reports claimed that Mitch McConnell wants to put stimulus in the CR. We haven't seen it happen yet. So we want to ensure that Mitch does that. That's the first thing. And we want to ensure that Mitch puts the right stimulus in the CR, not the wrong stimulus. We don't want to wake up and say, oh, he finally put stimulus in the CR. And then we look at it and then we realize, oh no, it's the wrong CR. What's important to understand is that the stimulus needs to ensure that millions of Americans get the right stimulus. What's important to understand is that the stimulus needs to be passed right away. When you're looking at what Mitch McConnell needs to say, he needs to ensure that there's a stimulus check, there's FPUC, there's PUA and UI in the stimulus package. Next, you need to ensure that it's done relatively quickly because the CR deadline is December 11th. It's not done on the last day, it's done days before. Next, the important thing to understand is that the CR goes from the Senate in this scenario and then goes to the House. Ultimately, you want to get Mitch to send it to the House in a way that makes sense. And the last equation is that the president reportedly is in talks with Mitch McConnell to ensure that the stimulus is in the CR and that the stimulus is reached right away. There's a lot of twists and a lot of turns, and I expect tomorrow to be confusing, but what's important for you to understand is not get confused by bad news. Bad news today was 3 bills that were bad bills that no one really cares about, and that ultimately the authors of those bills are just looking for a lot of publicity, and you shouldn't hear the bill and get nervous about the bill. You shouldn't take the bill and then send me a DM and say, oh my God, there's a bill and there's no stimulus check. Oh my God, my life is changing. No, it's a bill that's never going to get voted on, never going to be put on the floor. It's just a bill that is bad on its face, and we hope that we don't keep on seeing more bad bills. But the focus of this channel remains the Purple Power push. If you have questions or comments in today's video, drop them in the comments below. I might feature them in tomorrow's recording. Coming up next is Evenings in LA. As always, stay informed, stay smiling, and save my life for more.